Thank you for joining us in tonight's lesson. If you want to follow along, tonight's lesson will be from 2 Corinthians chapter 11. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 11. So I want you to think about a time that you consider your greatest suffering. What was it about, and how did you deal with it? I know there are many reasons for suffering out there, but I can only hope that none of your sufferings are as bad as Paul's. So if you turn to me in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, when Paul was talking about everything he had gone through, in verse 24 and 25, that's verses 24, verse 25, it says, 5 times I received, at the hands of the Jews, the 40 lashes less one. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I was adrift at sea. So after reading this, my mind automatically goes to, how could one person physically go through that much? And as we know, God is with Paul, and he would not let him die until it was his time. But he was still getting beaten repeatedly. Just the beatings for me, after one, I would find out, I don't like this. And that's where your faith kicks in, and where you find that motivation to keep moving forward. In Paul's case, his faith was his motivation. This shows Paul's willpower to fight for God, and his faith would help get him through all his sufferings. This should also make us take pride in our suffering and look at it from the standpoint of, I'm doing this for a purpose, and I'm willing to do anything it takes to achieve my goal. And our goal should be heaven. Even though Paul was treated wrongly and abused many of the places he went, he still didn't consider those his greatest suffering. In verse 28, that's verse 28, it says, and apart from other things, there is the daily pressure on me of my anxiety for all the churches. This shows how much Paul was going through. He probably wasn't in a great physical condition due to everything he had been through. And on top of that, he's struggling with anxiety for all the churches. And with all that, he still prioritizes his spiritual life, not his physical. So I'll ask you again, what is your greatest suffering? Is it physical ailments? Is it job or school related? Are your biggest pains and frustrations based on physical conditions? Paul wasn't trying to make us feel bad for him. In verse 30, that's verse 30, it says, if I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. Why? Because it allowed God's power to work in him. So if you're turning with me to 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 and 10, that's 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 and 10, it says, and he has said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I would rather boast of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore, I'm well content with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, with difficulties, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I hope Paul has encouraged you to look at your sufferings as an opportunity to allow God's power to work in you, and to be more concerned about the souls of other people who are living in sin and be willing to pay the price for God's cause. So friends, we are all going to suffer either way, whether a Christian or not. Wouldn't it be better to suffer as a Christian and have God's power on your side? If we can help you become a Christian, contact us at the information that will appear on your screen. And thank you for joining us.